Oh, yes, indeed. We have Mr. Muda Yusuf, who is the Director General of Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry. He's also an economist. Thank you for coming on this morning.
Thank you very much.
Well, yes, we looked at those figures. Over $12 billion worth of foreign investment inflow into the country in 2017, as released by the MBS. They also did say that the economy, the GDP is growing by, what, 0.83%, saying, yeah, but, and then the IMF report. So how do you juxtapose that alongside the glowing report, that picture that Laulo has just painted? So does it really add up?
Well, it depends on how you look at it. Because in economics, we have economic growth and we have economic development. Economic growth is more about the numbers, about what is happening to the GDP, what you call the national output, whether it is growing or whether it is slowing down. So when the GDP is growing, you have the national output growing. But when you talk of development, you are talking about the impact of this growth on the welfare of the people. Of course, one leads to the other. If you have growth, eventually
it should impact on the people.
Yes, you have development. But it may not be an instantaneous thing. Often there is a lag. That is one. Secondly, when you have growth, it depends on what is driving the growth. Because what we have seen for a very long time in this economy is that the oil sector continues to play a very dominant role in this economy. And the oil sector is not an inclusive sector. Because for the benefit of growth or any progress in the economy to be felt by the people, there must be a high measure of inclusiveness. In other words, the people must be part of the process. They must be involved.
So this is...
In the oil sector,
yeah,
there's no inclusiveness.
But
because it's about crude, we are not even refining.
But is there inclusiveness in the agriculture sector, do you think?
Of course there is inclusiveness. Because if you look at the aggregate of the output of the agricultural sector, people from far and wide are involved in it.
So how much of...
But the issue with agric is that the productivity is still very low. So when you even hear that, okay, agric is growing and all, the productivity is low. Because most of the farming techniques are still these traditional farming techniques. Although there's a lot of rhetoric about what is happening to agric here and there. But if you talk to the farmer, many of them, majority of them, they are just on their own.
But what would you say?
There's no concrete support, either to mechanize or to fund, or a lot of challenges that they are facing.
As part of the interventions by the CBN, the Anchors Borrowed program?
Well, there has been this Anchor Borrowed program, but you know, when you relate the intervention to the magnitude of the challenge on ground, it's pittance. Because also we are talking about intervention in UB, Kebbi, rice, and all of that. The problem is much bigger than that.
If the figures, the problem is much, much bigger than that, and we're looking at the agriculture sector, what do you think? Are you excited with this 0.83% growth, or are we maybe should wait until the half year before we begin to see the impact of the activities of government in terms of intervention and solid policies to try to see that we shore up even further our parting away with recession?
You see, growth is not an end in itself. It's a means to an end. The end is about welfare of the people. You just talk about poverty. We need to look at what factors are actually driving or perpetuating this poverty and see how we can now craft our policies to make sure that we address those issues. For instance, we have the issue of cost of living. Because one major factor in poverty is the purchasing power of the people. And the thing that erodes purchasing power is inflation, it's high prices. I mean, some 20, 30 years ago, people were buying vehicles for 10,000 naira, brand new vehicle. People were even buying vehicles for even 7,000 naira, brand new vehicle. So even as a senior officer, fairly junior officer, even in the ministry, on level 8, level 9, they were buying brand new vehicles.
The market forces have eroded that. So.
Yeah, it's the prices, the rate at which prices have grown is what has driven people to the level of the kind of poverty that we have.
Speaking about those interventions, if I could just jump in there, and one of the factors or indices that has some sort of bearing on cost is the foreign exchange.
Yes.
Now, the IMF in that same report also said that the CBN needed to simplify foreign exchange policy. They, in their words here, they're asking the CBN to stop the intervention activities in the foreign exchange market. Now, we know that the CBN has said time and again that those interventions actually help stabilize things, that if they were to hands off, prices would go sky high. Why do you think the IMF is saying that they should stop this?
You see, the IMF believes a lot in a market-driven process. And some of us also believe that. Because to a large extent, the most efficient way to allocate resources of this nature is to allow the market mechanism to function properly.
Shouldn't they contextualize that belief in our circumstance? Because if they were to implement this policy, hook, line, and sinker, everybody will be shouting, I reckon.
No, not exactly. Not exactly. You see, when we talk about a market-driven system, it's not absolute. In any market economy, that's what we call intervention of government. There will always be intervention. But what I think the IMF is saying is that we should allow the market to function better than what it is now.
Like what? What exactly will we do specifically?
No,
with respect to these interventions?
The issue is that now we have multiple exchange rates, for instance. Now officially we hear that the exchange rate is 305. I don't know how many people are getting it. You have a rate for those who are importing fuel. You have a rate for school fees. You have a rate for all sorts of things. You have the BDC rate. You have the importers and exporters window. I mean, you don't run an economy like that. Because if you do that, you create gaps for people to be depending on rent, what you call rent, undue advantage, where people reap where they did not sow. You know? And all those things create distortions in the economy. They create problem of corruption. They create problem of transparency.
What kind of economic reforms do we need? Because if the IMF is this concerned about how to, reposition Nigeria, what kind of economic reforms do you think we need to actually put in place now to suggest that we're on the path of trajectory, on the trajectory of growth?
You see, first, the government alone cannot drive this process by its own resources. So you need, we are talking of a budget of 7-point-something trillion. The economy is a 100 trillion economy. That is just 7% of the GDP. So something must be happening at the federal level. Something concrete must be happening at the state level. Something concrete must be happening at the local government level.
Like what?
And something must be happening at the private sector level.
Like what?
I'm talking about investment, involvement in the process, supporting the economic activities at various levels.
But we just had 12.2 billion as FDIs coming into the country.
FDIs, it depends on where it is going. It is possible that they are going maybe to telecoms or to oil sector or to the oil market and all of that. But in order to impact the lives of the people, in order to create jobs.
Are those ones are they exclusive growth?
Well, I won't say they're exclusive. It depends if you have the details of where they are going. But if something is a portfolio investor, for instance, that goes to the capital market or goes to buy bonds or buy treasury bills, that will not trickle down immediately. But if you have such investments, maybe in real sector, maybe in agri or in infrastructure, that may in the medium to long term have some significant effect. But the point I'm making is that we need to create a situation where the small businesses will be more productive. They'll be able to do businesses more sustainably. Because right now, the mortality rate of small businesses is very high. You set up a business today, 2-3 years down the line, the business is down. You can't sustain it because of the challenges of the environment. and making the environment more conducive for investment. It's not just the responsibility of the federal government alone. The state governments have a role, the local governments have a role. All the regulatory institutions have a role to play to ensure that you have that space for productivity.
We'll come back to this in just a moment and also see what is being done to further perhaps speak to those challenges raised. Join us again.